by a very, very powerful and a very, very strong woman in Barbara Arnwine. Looking forward to her recap in this hour. Reverend Teresa Hord Owens is our regular contributor on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on Mondays. Reverend Terry Hord Owens is the general minister and president of the Christian Church, the Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, an author and advocate for the church living out its calling. She's the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination. Since her election in 2017, Reverend Hord Owens' ministry actively reflects the Disciples' priority of being an anti-racist church, being a movement for wholeness, welcoming all to the Lord's table as God has welcomed us. In keeping with the Disciples' historic commitment to Christian unity, she serves as leadership at the National Council of Churches and as treasurer of the governing board and a member of the World Council of Churches Central Committee. And last but not least, our regular contributor, Liz King, recently served as Education Equity Senior Program Director for the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, a position she's held since 2015 until 2025. In this role, Ms. King led organizations' work to ensure that all students are fully included in welcoming schools from early childhood through post-secondary education that prepare them for college, careers, life, and the full exercise of their social, political, and economic rights. In this hour, I know Barbara Arnwine is going to update us on No King's Day. I am confident that they will cover the Voting Rights Act and so many other critical issues that are critical to women, critical to our nation, and critical to our world. I'm very proud to introduce those of you, our facilitator, the creator of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, Gina Towns. I am here in studio with everyone, but I am in the background today, honoring women in this final moment of Women's History Month, which, Gina, I think you're probably right. It should be held every single day and not just on today. Please share the program if you're on Facebook and all of our social media programs and platforms at KBLA. Gina?
Well, thank you, Jesse. I am thrilled. These are the ladies of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show celebrating Women's History Month. It is our special time to really just interact with one another and maybe even look at some of the topics that we talk about each week from a woman's perspective. In the last hour, I was very, very privileged to have who were on and who gave us some perspective. And in this hour, I am looking forward to starting. I'm almost going to give you a countdown, Barbara, but I'm not. I'm going to just let you start right there with No King's Day. Barbara, please give us an update on No King's Day.
It was amazing. 8 million people took to the American streets. This is the largest single day of demonstrations in our history. And what was amazing is that it's an increase, from the last No Kings. People say, movements, tend to kind of peter out, right? They tend to not have as much excitement, as much commitment, as much presence. But this one, not only was the United States, every state in the union involved, but every continent in the world had a No Kings, and we had some of the reddest counties in the United States where President Trump did so well had demonstrations. People are disappointed. People are upset. I walked in that march in Philadelphia, and I'm going to tell you, as we marched, my heart was uplifted several times, broken several times. A young lady in front of me had a placard on her body, and it was pictures of Renee Good. And you could tell her death, her slaying, had really profoundly influenced this young lady. I saw families with children, being pulled in their various wagons. I saw, people of every race. And in fact, I was really impressed that in Philadelphia, I saw a real increase in African-American turnout, much more than I had seen in the past at other No Kings. I also was, really struck by all, like I mentioned, the intergenerational, all the ages. I saw people who, one person said he was 102. I saw who was out there. I saw people who had their newborn babies out there. It was, I saw, college students. I saw so many different people and so many signs with so many issues. The war was huge. People are upset with the war. They're upset with ICE. They're upset with so many malfunctions within this authoritarian regime being headed by President Trump. But
Barbara, when we come forward, I
Yes.
want to continue that conversation. When we come forward, it's the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, Women's History Month special.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. These are hard times for housing in America. Too many in our community face barriers to safe housing, behavioral health care, and affirming spaces for healing, particularly those impacted by poverty and stigma or incarceration. Rooted in South LA, Ahmad supports impacted communities through housing, wellness, and leadership development. Ahmad provides culturally responsive, peer-led support from transitional housing and mental health services to leadership development and youth empowerment. They offer safe, affirming houses for youth, transgender women, and formerly incarcerated individuals. Therapy and peer support with a focus on healing trauma in Black communities. HIV prevention and care, free testing, education, and wraparound services for whole person wellness. Standing in the gap with health, housing, and hope. Reach out to Ahmad Institute at 323-569-1610. That's 323-569-1610. Or visit amaad.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Progressive knows that for business owners, vacations hit different. But hey, at least you finally took a vacation. And look at that. You only answered 53 calls, 84 emails, onboarded one new hire, and covered for Chris while he's out on paternity leave, and you did it all from a kayak. Because you, my friend, know how to relax. All right, you may not know how to take a day off, but you do know both your personal and business auto insurance needs can be covered in one place with Progressive. So at least that's relaxing, right? Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states or situations.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Folly, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download.
I'm Gina A. Towns, and I am the host of Reflectivity here on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I am with Reverend Terry Hoard Owens, who is the host, and this is her hour. This is the Faith Not to Fall with Reverend Terry Hoard Owens. We are also joined by our host on Tuesdays, On the Grind with Barbara Arnwire Esquire and Liz King, who joins us twice a month on Lighten It Up with Liz King, and we are ready to lighten it up. If you can continue to give us a little bit more information you saw.
Yes. I saw, signs, of course, remorseful signs for Alex Preddy's family, for his slaying. I saw a lot of anti-ICE signs. I saw a lot of humor I mean, people, one beauty about these demonstrations that's so different of the demonstrations from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s is that people have incorporated that principle that that Black voters matters has injected into the movement, which is that we must have joy in these moments, that it can't all be solemn, and it can't all be sad, it can't all be anger, it can't all be just frustration. That joy is a sign of our belief and our ability to achieve and to change all of this. So it was just beautiful, and people were so sweet to each other. But what I loved about, I want to say Vicki Miller, who is the head of Indivisible in Philadelphia and did all the organizing for this, and her team, genius, because you couldn't walk more than a number of blocks without hitting some soulful music, and the Philly sound was everywhere. And people were dancing in those streets as they moved. People, it helped to uplift the spirits. People were there in their big old, suits with the chickens and all the other kind of things to bring humor to the moment, but also to, talk about how we're all being clowned by this administration. I thought there was, just so many people talked about food stamps, Medicaid, SNAP. They talked about every possible issue, the attack on Black history. In fact, Michael Cord, who is an amazing lawyer, activist, and radio host in Philadelphia, was one of the few speakers. One thing about No Kings, they don't have 30 speakers. They have 5, 6 the max. And Michael Cord was one of the people, and he laid it out about the attack and the attempt to erase Black history, the attack on Black history. He talked specifically about Philadelphia, where they tried to take down the placards talking about the 9 slaves that George Washington held at the, quote, Philadelphia White House. And he talked about that battle and how it was won, and how it was a people's battle, and I was really surprised and happy because the crowd roared several times during his speech as he talked about racism, because a lot of people believe that the progressive left and the whites within that movement aren't ready for racial justice messaging, but he brought it straight on, and people were like, yes, we're all here for this, we're all here for each other. It was amazing, high-spirited. People were leaving, and as they left, as everything was over and people were leaving, you could tell one thing: they're ready. They're ready to move forward. People weren't like, I'm worn out. People were like, I'm ready. What's the next? What do I do next? How do I keep moving? And I thought Senator Vincent Hughes, one of Reverend Jesse Jackson's mentees, he's one of the most popular, amazing senators in Philadelphia, and one of the the state of Pennsylvania. And he is so amazing because what he did was he wore his Reverend Jesse Jackson Keep Hope Alive t-shirt. Oh, wow. And he spoke about keep hope alive, and he ended with chants, when we fight, we win. When we fight, we win.
Barbara, thank you so much for your leadership throughout this process. And I also heard you say that the organizer for No King's Day, or the primary person, was a woman as well. And I want to say that even though people weren't in some of the larger marches, there were so many little smaller locations.
Yes.
That people gathered, they came out. I saw them at seniors buildings, and everyone was there. It was amazing to watch, and it was great to hear people blowing their horns and letting their windows down. So there certainly is a camaraderie. And I have to imagine that one of the women who fuels your fire, and I'm going to certainly ask you to tell us who fuels your fire, but I think about Harriet Tubman as well. In leading these kinds of movements. Who is the person who sources you, if you will, as far as your leadership in this hour from history?
Well, God is good, and there are two. I am just Harriet Tubman is without question my North Star, but so is Fannie Lou Hamer.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I'm about fighting women. I'm about women who defied the odds, women who folks said they were, quote, illiterate, that they didn't have the you know, the niceties and all the stature, and they turned this nation around. Their presence on this earth has been definitive to how this country looks today. And it's just so important for us to embrace our sisters. That's why I love Women's History Month. But of course, you know, most of us, I'm sure all my sisters are here, we're 324. We're, you know, we're 352 days. You know, we're there every single day fighting
Yeah.
for women, and every day uplifting some amazing woman in our past and our history. And God, thank God for all the young upcoming women that I saw in those streets.
Yeah, Liz, piggybacking on some of what Barbara has shared, and in particular, who has been your inspiration? Because you are a fireball for justice and for justice movements. Tell us about where you think we are. I mean, even as we look at the women who are involved in this administration and their role in having us where we are today. I mean, it really is a step away from women who have been involved in justice movements, so to say. But who has been your inspiration, and what is it that you're seeing today as far as those who do and those who don't step into the role of leadership right now?
Yeah, thanks, Gina. It's so great to be here. Always great to be on the show. This is such a hard question. I think the one, though, the name I wanted to bring forward is Marian Wright Edelman, who I've talked about on this show before. Just an amazing, amazing leader who has shown that federal policy advocacy, which can be stuck down deep in muck and mire, can be a path to justice and opportunity for children, women, and families. And I think about, you know, all the work that she has done over these many decades, and think about the work that she did directly that meant so many more children get to go to school and be educated and be respected, but also just the tremendous role she has played as a mentor to so many other people and so many organizations. And so much advocacy at the federal government level is by people who were trained by her, inspired by her, led by her at one time or another. And, you know, I just, what I always remember about Mrs. Edelman is how focused she is with moral clarity on the moral call here. You know, and I feel like we're in this moment right now where people keep saying, well, we don't have time for morality. We don't have time for values. We have to be strategic, as if there exists a strategy that is not guided by and informed by our values and what it is we know to be true and what we believe in. And that, for me, it is that sort of deep and profound commitment. Whenever you face a tough decision, you're asking yourself, what is the right thing to do? What do I owe to my community? What do I owe to the people that I work with and work for, and those I'm advocating with and for? And I think for me, just so much of this is about Marian Wright Edelman. And now is a time that calls on sort of what we have learned from her and all of the people she has taught. And, you know, and she, just to Barbara Armand's point, like, she will tell the story about the role that Ella Baker played in her own life. And that she tells a story about the role of Fannie Lou Hamer. And it just is a reminder that civil rights work and justice work is not a marathon. It is a relay race. And we only ever take the baton from those who came before and pass it on to those who come after. And how do we think about this as a multi-generational movement with this overlap? So we keep those leaders, we keep those people who've been in the work, we welcome those new people with less experience and more energy, and figure out, how do we keep the knowledge moving forward? How do we make sure our movement can adapt? But how do we always make sure our movement is grounded profoundly in our values and what we believe and know to be true? And I think for me, really, it is Mrs. Edelman who has shown the way on that in so many ways.
So I have to tell everyone who cannot see us, who's not watching us live on YouTube or Facebook or Substack, that if you cannot see us, everyone here is going to have a neck ache after this show, because as Liz was bringing the message, everybody was nodding in an affirmative. You know, you preached a sermon, you were in the courtroom. Thank you, Liz, for that. And it is a great segue for because one thing that I heard was the moral leader. And I am a big advocate of moral law versus, or not versus, but meeting the civil law. Our moral law must meet our civil law if we are ever going to achieve on earth as it is in heaven. And because that is part of the prayer that so many people know and pray, or at least have some knowledge of, that means that there's the possibility that it can be. So let me direct this over to Reverend Terry Hord Owens so that we can talk about moral leadership in this moment in Women's History Month.
Thank you, Gina. And thank you to my sisters here. This is just filling my cup. And you're so right, Liz. Without a moral center, really nothing can happen. And as I always say on the show, I'm a Christian minister, but I don't care what your tradition is. If you have no tradition, I think the thing that makes even human community possible is the common belief that we must all flourish together, and that we all have a right for dignity and respect, and that we can all flourish together. There's not a single religious tradition that doesn't have some version of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, loving your neighbor. And so I know it's Women's History Month, but I'll name John Lewis, the late congressman from Georgia, who was a young man in the 60s on the front line on the Selma to Montgomery March, was almost killed, literally got his head bashed in. He always writes about the movement from a theological perspective, and says that nonviolent practice was a spiritual practice for him. And I think there's something inner spirit in each of us that holds movements together, right? You may not frame it as I might in a religious context, but there's the human spirit that whatever you call holy, whatever you assign as that higher power that holds us all together. And that's what allows us, our deference to that power of the human spirit is what allows us to really want to work for each other. I heard you're talking about women that I admire and respect. I come from a historic community in Indiana, one of the first free Black settlements in Indiana, settled by Black folks coming up from North Carolina and Georgia in the 1820s. And both of my grandmothers were historians of these communities and shared a lot with me about those. And I'm so grounded in what I do now because I know who I am and where I come from. I was listening to NPR last week in the car as I was driving to visit my dad in Galesburg, Illinois, who's a retired African-American studies professor. If you know me and know him, then you don't question why I am the way I am. And then if you have met my mother, you'd have no doubt. But Brian Stevenson was being interviewed about this new Montgomery site that he has as part of the Equal Justice Initiative. He got a chance to meet Joanne Carr, who was the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association, which really organized the Montgomery bus boycott. Dr. King came in later to give voice to the movement, but it was organized by women, mimeographing flyers, organizing the carpools. And he got a chance to meet not only Joanna Carr, but she introduced him to Rosa Parks. And he was telling Rosa Parks all the things that he wanted to do. And she said to him, what you're going to do is going to make you tired, but you need to be brave. And then she took his hand and said, will you be brave? And I think it's the power of the women in our lives who have told us what it takes and will say, can you be brave?
I think that's incredible. I cannot until we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Women's History Month special is today with the women of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We will continue this conversation, and that's just full of so much meat with Terry Hord Owens, Barbara Arnwine, Liz King, and myself at come back now 6 minutes from now on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Victor Glover will pilot NASA's Artemis II mission, becoming the first Black astronaut to travel around the moon.
I also hope we are pushing the other direction, that one day we don't have to talk about these first, that one day this is just, and I listen to this, that this is the human history.
The mission marks the first crewed lunar flight since 1972 and is expected to return with a Pacific Ocean splashdown. The Justice Department is suing Minnesota over its sports policies, arguing they violate civil rights laws. Black Attorney General Keith Ellison says the state will defend transgender students and criticize the lawsuit. And Black South Florida Congresswoman Sheila Sherfilis McCormick is facing growing pressure from fellow Democrats over ethics allegations and criminal charges tied to campaign funds. Some are calling for her resignation, while she maintains the accusations are politically motivated. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Now is the time to save on an award-winning Nissan at the Nissan Now sales event, featuring the Rogue, Pathfinder, Frontier, and more. Don't wait. These offers are going fast. Shop your Southern California Nissan dealers and NissanUSA.com today.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LeBron's youngest son, Bryce, is a member of the Arizona men's basketball team, but you will not see him on the court in the Final Four. Bryce James, a 6'5" freshman guard, decided on February 3rd to redshirt the rest of the season. Before that decision was made, with input from his father, Bryce had not appeared in any of Arizona's first 22 games. At the time, a very deep Arizona team was 22-0 and number one in the nation. Arizona is one of two number one seeds that made it to the Final Four. Michigan is the other number one. Michigan and Arizona will meet up in one of the semifinals Saturday in Indianapolis. Illinois and UConn are in the other semifinal. Alabama State is looking for a new men's basketball coach. Tony Matlock left the HBCU school to become an assistant under Penny Hardaway at Memphis. Matlock was 51-80 in 4 seasons at Alabama State. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance tech at a university, he knows ordering from multiple suppliers takes time away from keeping their arena up and running. That's why he counts on Grainger to get everything he needs, from lighting and HVAC parts to plumbing supplies, all in one place. And with fast, dependable delivery, he's stocked and ready for the next tip-off. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Why'd I go to the doctor? Working on the farm, my heart kept skipping a beat. I didn't think much of it, but my daughters made me get checked out. Turns out I have atrial fibrillation, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times.
Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if it's AFib, the risk of stroke remains. If you have symptoms, contact a doctor.
I'm so glad I did.
Visit notimetowait.com. Sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Hey guys, do you want male performance in the bedroom and do you want it now? Get it in 47 seconds or less. For the first time, you can have instant male enhancement. Introducing Nox 47, the topical male enhancement that works in 47 seconds or less. Satisfaction guaranteed. Finally, after years of scientific research, our proprietary formula will allow you to perform in the bedroom like never before. Just imagine that little blue pill on steroids. No reason to settle and wait when you can get instant performance now. Forget about pills and potions that make you wait hours or up to 30 days to work. That's yesterday's news. Nox 47 is brand new. The hottest thing for men. And you don't need a prescription. Call now and get your free supply for a limited time.
To find out how to get Nox 47 for free, call now. 800-677-1453. That's 800-677-1453. Free bottles for limited time. Call 800-677-1453. That's 800-677-1453.
All I need is one mic. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte. Less than 24 hours before a planned California governor's debate, USC and KABC Television Channel 7 pulled the plug after a week of growing outrage that not a single candidate of color had been invited to participate. USC says it was just math, polling numbers, fundraising totals, nothing personal. But here's the problem with that argument. Every one of the 6 candidates who made the cut was white, and every one of the candidates left out was not. At some point, the outcome is the message, regardless of the formula that produced it. The 4 excluded candidates, former U.S. Health Secretary Javier Becerra, former L.A. Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, former State Controller Betty Yee, and State Superintendent Tony Thurmond, are not fringe figures. These are people who've won major statewide elections and served millions of Californians. Here's the deeper lesson. California is one of the most diverse states in the nation. Latino voters, Black voters, and Asian American voters don't just live here. We decide elections here. When the people organizing a debate about California's future build a stage that looks nothing like California, they're not just making a scheduling error, they're sending a signal about whose voice matters. Even some of the invited candidates called on USC to expand the field, ostensibly because they understood what was at stake. That said, it is worth noting that none of the invited candidates had the courage to stand in solidarity with people of color and bow out of participating in the debate. But we'll leave that alone for now. Canceling the debate was not a victory. It was damage control. The real lesson is that diversity cannot be an afterthought in the criteria. It has to be baked into the thinking from the very beginning. Voters of color are not a special interest. We are the electorate. With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte. As always, we welcome your feedback.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download the app.
You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. And today we are so very excited to have the women of the Jesse Jackson. They're all assembled together. Our regular contributors, Terry Hort Owens from The Faith Not to Fall on Mondays. This is her normal segment. And Liz King from Lighting It Up. She's on with us every first and third Tuesday. And of course, Barbara Arnwine, who is with us in the second hour on Tuesdays on the grind with Barbara Arnwine. And certainly that is where we have been. I want to pick up the conversation. And, while we were on closing the previous segment, I thought about how important it is in a patriarchal society that men are courageous and creative enough to know where their bread is buttered, to respect the women who have been in their lives, and to have provided the opportunities where women didn't take it for themselves, because we know that we can do that, but have offered. There are certainly, Terry, you brought up John Lewis. And certainly there have been men, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who have been pivotal in pushing women out into the forefront. And there have been so many. And, I'm not going to miss Jesus in that conversation either. So I do want to, give that thanks to men who have allowed the women to be the backbone, but also to be right out in front, as clear as the nose on your face. I'm going to leave that anybody to jump in on that particular conversation, because it does take a strong man to go with a strong woman. How about we start with you, Liz?
Yeah, I think this is just a good reminder that how important it is. And, I've been thinking a lot about the role of white women in the movement and just the importance of understanding that white women are making choices and they're deciding which side to be on and where to align themselves. Similarly, men in the women's movement have had to make those choices, and there have been men who've gotten in the way, and then there have been men who have been part of the solution, who recognized that they themselves were burdened by the patriarchy, that they themselves were limited, and that we're not going to get anywhere, unless we get there together. And thinking about Frederick Douglass, and I think we underestimate the critical role of Frederick Douglass in women's suffrage and the way in which Frederick Douglass was enabling and contributing to women's leadership in the abolitionist movement specifically, but in the sort of global, the justice movements more broadly. Obviously, a tremendous leader in so many ways, including as a supporter of justice and equal opportunity for women. And thinking about the interrelatedness of all of this, I think we have all seen and benefited from partnership with men who felt called to justice and equal opportunity, to gender justice, who knew that this is all of us or none of us. I've been thinking a lot about women in the labor movement, thinking about Mother Jones and the role that she played, Jane Addams as a core leader in reforming our criminal legal system that was hurting so many children for so long. And it just is a reminder, no matter who you are, no matter your background, you have a responsibility to show up, because these systems of oppression and marginalization, nobody really wins. You may think you're winning. You may think as a man that you are benefiting from the subjugation of women, but it's a lie. It's a lie. And so thankfully there are men who have found that and have sort of realized and seen the truth that they have a responsibility and an opportunity to show up in solidarity. So, I think about Wade Henderson, certainly who was a longtime leader of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, who understood better than anybody else ever has the role of solidarity and showing up in the interconnectedness of liberation movements. So yeah, I do feel fortunate to have been surrounded by great leaders of all genders, and specifically men who have found their way to be on the right side of women's history and the right side of gender justice and equality for women.
Mm-hmm. I was just looking while you were talking at the men who were pivotal in the 19th Amendment being passed. And you never really have heard these people mentioned in any sort of conversation. Max Eastman was the Men's Equal Suffrage League founder, James Lee's Laidlaw, Congressman Thetis Sims, and earlier supporters, we did mention Frederick Douglass and James Mott. These men here some of them were married to these women. And I don't know, a happy wife, happy life might have been going on in that, but you also, you have to really give a lot of credit to, because even as you saw the 15th Amendment being passed, and Black men got the right to vote and women did not, and it was quite a while before women got that right to vote. So, we do give men credit. But as we move along here and we think about where it is that we still need to go, and whether it is, in the justice, in the legal system, justice and reform in the church, Terry, tell me a little bit about what you're seeing and the role of women as it's changing and morphing within the church.
Well, I'm only the second woman to lead my mainline denomination, and my predecessor was the first woman to lead any mainline denomination. And to date, there have still not been any women to lead the historically Black denominations. There have been women. I believe Bishop Vashti McKenzie was president of the College of Bishops in the AME Church. There have been women who have been president of the College of Bishops, but never a presiding or senior bishop. So we still have a long way to go in the church. We have denominations that are ordaining, but there's still a move to make sure that we get women who are being received as pastors, right, and pulpits and leaders of other kinds of organizations. And the reality that women just lead differently, and understanding who you are, your organizational skills, your relationship protocols are different, but we still have a long way to go. I think I've had a harder time in the Black church, quite honestly. And there are still, depending upon where you go in different denominations, there is more or less reception of Black women, and even in ministerial leadership. And sometimes those particular constructs have been handed down to men who are young enough to be my son, right? So it's a concern, and we're making progress, but my own ministry kind of parallels a lot of that struggle. We're making strides, but I think communities in color still tend to have larger vestiges of the patriarchy, and I think that's true in Asian and Hispanic communities. Disciples, we're 80% white, 10% Black, 7% or so Hispanic, and 2-3% Asian Pacific Islander. So what I see in my own communities and what women in those communities share is that it's harder still in communities of color that are more reluctant in a church setting to allow women to lead.
Let's pick up right there when we come forward. This is the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, our Women's History Month special, and we will be 3 minutes. We will come forward. This is Gina Towns. I'm your host.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Getting around LA doesn't have to cost a lot. Metro has fares that fit every budget. 20 free rides for qualified riders through the Life Fare program. Free passes for students with GoPass, and affordable options for everyone in between. Wherever you're going, Metro's got you covered. Visit metro.net/fare programs.
We're at Doolin's on Crenshaw. It's a special place where the neighborhood comes together. Got the fried chicken, the catfish, the candied yams, the mac and cheese. It's all delicious. I'm Isaac Bryan. I represent the Crenshaw District in the California State Legislature, and I'm supporting Tom Steyer for governor of California. California is under attack, and we need a fighter who's going to come in on day one and stand up for California values and push back. That person is Tom Steyer. Tom and I have been fighting together for the better part of a decade. Tom is the only candidate supported by smart justice, because Tom has stood on the front lines of racial justice, economic justice, and true solidarity. Tom is the real deal. He's the only candidate in the race with a comprehensive plan to make the billionaires and the corporations pay their fair share so we can fund things like universal health care and education. He means what he says, and he does what we need. This is a moment when we've got to fight fire with fire, and I believe that fire is Tom Steyer.
Ad paid for by Steyer for Governor 2026.
It's game day. Are your moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms keeping you from the action? Skyrizi, risankizumab Riza, could help you get back to the game. Skyrizi is proven to help people feel significant symptom relief, achieve remission, and visibly improve damage of the intestinal lining. Skyrizi is a prescription injection medicine for adults. Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions, increased infections, or lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor about any flu-like symptoms or vaccines. Liver problems leading to hospitalization may occur when treated for Crohn's or ulcerative colitis.
Control is everything to me.
Ask your doctor about Skyrizi, the #1 prescribed biologic in Crohn's and ulcerative colitis combined. Learn more at skyrizi.com or 1-866-SKYRIZI.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. These are hard times for housing in America. Too many in our community face barriers to safe housing, behavioral health care, and affirming spaces for healing, particularly those impacted by poverty and stigma or incarceration. Rooted in South LA, Ahmad supports impacted communities through housing, wellness, and leadership development. Ahmad provides culturally responsive, peer-led support from transitional housing and mental health services to leadership development and youth empowerment. They offer safe, affirming houses for youth, transgender women, and formerly incarcerated individuals. Therapy and peer support with a focus on healing trauma in Black communities. HIV prevention and care, free testing, education, and wraparound services for whole person wellness. Standing in the gap with health, housing, and hope. Reach out to Ahmad Institute at 323-569-1610. That's 323-569-1610. Or visit amaad.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Quality drops the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and
This
listen
is
to
the
me.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA.
Day sitting in for Jesse Jackson Jr. Thank you, Jesse, for allowing women to have our day on your show. Thank you, KBLA, for all that you did on this past Friday. KBLA did the whole day and night, and it was a women's takeover, and it before we came forward, walking about the pivotal role that some men have had in pushing women forward. But we do know that a lot of women have been disenfranchised in this hour because of the rules that this administration has. Think that the dismantling of the Department of Education, the dismantling of our healthcare system, SNAP benefits for single moms, on and on with all of that. How can we as women support one another, Barbara? Unmute yourself, Barbara.
Sorry about that. First of all, we got to understand all our commonality. I mean, one of the sadness of what we're dealing with right now with the SAVE Act attack, those 69 million married women who are going to now become second-class citizens. They're going to have to, if in fact this thing passed, what the vision that they have for women is that we would have to, those of us who are married and have taken our husband's surnames, that we would have to what? We would have to either, because there's no exact match to our necessarily to our identification, to our birth certificates, that we would have to go and personally sign an affidavit that somehow attests that we are who we are, and the men just walk straight by. The husband just walks straight by while the wife is going to be burdened. That's what they envision for us. That's why we're fighting that ugly bill. That's one reason why we're trying to make sure that it never passes. And as long as we have breath, I don't think it will. The other thing, I think that people, so that's all women. It doesn't say based on race. It just says women. But on the other hand, I think we got to stand up for each other. When we see women being affected by ICE, Renee Good, give her credit, that she stood up for other women who weren't like her. She was white. She had privilege, but she said, hell to the no, as long as my sisters who are Latino, who are, African, are being deported, I'm going to stand up for them. and she ended up having to give her life. I mean, that's the kind of spirit women need to have towards each other. Instead of that, spirit of, I'm a white woman, so I'm privileged. We gotta, Renee points the way. I also think that on, maternal health. I mean, look at it, Black maternal health, the mortality rates are so horrible that we really should be uplifting that. Everybody, every woman should say, no, that's not acceptable to have third world, death rates for Black women in this country. So I just think there's, one of the things that we teach and talk about, because, I work a lot with Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, is we talk about intersectional failure. And people don't understand that concept, but it's key. You can't understand the 1960s and 70s civil rights movements without understanding intersectional failure. And so Dr. Crenshaw has actually created a play where, in that play, the fictional Barbara Arnwine is engaged in a spiritual conversation with the deceased Dr. Martin Luther King. And we're talking about the current day movement and about what it would have looked like if, in fact, Black women, had been given the status they deserved during those decades of civil rights advocacy, and how that intersectional failure leads to where we are today. And so there's just so much for us to understand in the same intersectional failure that happened back when the 19th Amendment was passed, with not positioning and making sure that Black women were able to vote. I mean, all these issues. So one of the things that we know, that as we move forward as organizers, as believers, as fighters, 365 days a year, that we must have that ability to be intersectional, to reach out and bring in our broadcloth, our whole cloth of coverage for all women.
Barbara, thank you for that. And I'm going to pivot to Liz, because one thing that I know is very difficult. How do we help women? And I'm going to ask you the same question, and for that word of hope, Terry, before we go. How do we help women choose between being white and being a woman, being Black and being a woman, and look for our commonalities as women together?
Yeah, I mean, just to Barbara Arnwine's point, and then obviously the invocation of Dr. Crenshaw and all that we have learned and been told. I mean, people's lives are just more complicated than any one identity will allow, and that we have got to come together. I'll just invoke one other name here. Fatima Goss-Graves, who's the president and CEO of the National Women's Law Center, is really leading the way in so many ways and calling out the ways in which this injustice shows up. And it hurts white women, and it hurts Latino women and Native women and Asian American women, and all women are harmed, and the way in which we all have to come together here in solidarity. So I think it is a choice about living into your own life, thinking about the future of your children. No person should ever give birth and have to risk their own life to give life. I mean, it just makes no sense, and we can do better than this. And solidarity is the only way forward. We have to learn this lesson painfully, generation after generation, and the only path forward is together. I think that is what we keep learning over and over again. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In our final 30 seconds, Reverend Owens, can you give us a word of hope? Unmute, Terry.
That plea for solidarity and unity really is summed up in the book of Galatians, where Paul says, be not weary in what you're doing, for in due season you'll reap if you faint not. And it's the perseverance of women fighting for the humanity of all women, are the source of life. And so we have been fighting for generations and centuries to ensure the flourishing of all human beings. But I think our word of hope is that we can't give up. We must be brave, as Rosa Parks said. Will you be brave? That's with me, and I offer that to all the women out there. Don't give up. Will you be brave?
And to all the mothers who have had to fight for their children who have been murdered, and who are missing, we remember you in this moment. I'm Gina A. Towns. This is the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We will see you tomorrow on Tenacious Tuesday, and Jesse will be back with us. This is KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.